Sega does what Nintendo don't. At least that's what the advertising of the early 1990s would like you to believe. But as the 5th generation of consoles drew to an end, things were changing. For a start, Sony had stepped into the scene as a new dominant player, making Sega increasingly desperate to outperform their rivals. Sonic was already a leaner, slimmer, faster platformer than Mario, and as the Nintendo mascot had a kart racing franchise, it was only natural that the Sega mascot had already tried his hand at that, once with a blatant spin-off and once with a foot racer that defied all convention. But the real remaining jewel in the Mario crown that Sonic couldn't compare with was the party game franchise. When Mario Party burst onto the scene in 1998, it must have immediately appealed to Sega that the game was being developed not directly by their main rival, but the independent studio Hudson Soft. The board game themed Minigame collection was a hit with fans, leading to not just one but 2 more sequels on the same console. Sega, seeing the clear blue waters ahead of Nintendo, of course they wanted in on that action. And yes, it's easy to beat this game over the head with the criticism that it's just a Mario Party clone. Of course it is. In the same way that every platforming video game has been a clone of the original Super Mario Bros. It's a genre, one you either enjoy or that you don't. The real question is, how did the developers work to distinguish this game from what came before? Firstly, whereas Mario Party revolves around dice, they decided that Sonic should use cards. This game gives you much more control over where you land, in theory making this a speedier and snappier experience. Want to revel in the chaos of mini-games? Go ahead. Alternatively, just want to get the board over with and progress on to the next area? You can try to do that. The cards should cater for every playstyle, and they would, if only the CPU wasn't such a dastardly cheat. Multiplayer Sonic Shuffle can actually be quite fun. Every player can see their own cards, or if none of them suit, take a chance at picking one of their rivals at random. The beauty of the VMU save devices on the Sega controller mean that even if you gather 4 players around a single TV, each of them has complete privacy in their deck of cards, as the big screen keeps the cards turned over whilst the controller gives you a private display of your deck. This is a beautiful piece of game design, with synergy between the hardware and the software. However, it does beg the question, how many people really gathered 4 players together in a room with 4 separate controllers with 4 different VMU displays? The game is designed rigidly for 4 players, so whether you play alone, as a pair, or as a free, the gaps will be filled in by the CPU. Each and every board will task you and your rivals of crossing to a specified point on the board to collect precious stones, the plot specified MacGuffin that the entire game revolves around. Each precious stone appears one at a time, causing a small mini race as you dash across the board towards it, avoiding obstacles and collecting rings. If you're the furthest from the stone when it's collected, then Eggman will pop up and smash half your rings away. In truth, it doesn't matter whether you collect all the stones or not. At the end of the day, it's the rings that count. So if you ensure you stay near the leader, but collect the most rings and win the most minigames, you're in the pink. But these mandatory CPU players can see everyone's cards, and they will always take the ones that they need. A typical game of Sonic Shuffle starts with the CPU selecting all of the high value cards, the ones that enable you to cross the board or to defeat enemies, from both themselves and then every other player in turn. This means that the game goes in phases, a quick moment after the deck restocks where everyone moves quickly, and then long, turgid phases where all you have are 1s and 2s and nobody is going anywhere fast. You as an individual know that you have to play your high cards first, because if you don't, the CPU will steal them from you. And if you want to try and pay them back, well, you're in the lap of the gods because you don't know what cards they have. This means that what was designed to be a player-friendly, fast-paced alternative to the sheer randomness of the Mario Party dice instead feels both slow and terribly unfair. The CPU is not unbeatable, however. Just because it has the upper hand regarding the cards doesn't mean that you can't level the playing field in the minigames. Here is where the game really embraces the weird. They vary from as trivial to trying not to open a fizzy drinks can, which has been shaken up, to passing a bomb between different players, you trying to move it on before it explodes. Most of the minigames are accessible and short, although a few of them do confuse, as has always been the case for these collections. The developers tried to limit the CPU. Its one disadvantage is it can't tell the difference between the special cards and the Eggman card, so there is a chance when it's stealing from your deck it will trip over itself and cause itself irrevocable harm. However, again, it's 50-50 about whether this penalty is applied just to them or to all players, so that's not really a win. For 4 assembled players looking for a brief diversion, this is a quite decent alternative to the Mario Party brand. However, the game sells itself on the single player adventure, which is far less successful. The cast and character models were all ripped from Sonic Adventure. This was the first moment it became clear that the Sonic Adventure redesign hadn't just been a game with a new style. This modern Sonic was now its own distinct thing, because the next game would introduce a new polarising character who would shake up the status quo quite significantly. It actually feels quite weird to see a game in this brief innocent era where Sonic, Tails, Knuckles and Amy were the core cast of the franchise. Complete the game and you can unlock some bonus characters, and depending upon the date, actually get some interesting cuts from Sonic Team's history. It's a nice package. In retrospect, it's gone on to be one of the least ported games in Sonic's history, the only one of the Dreamcast era not to arrive on any subsequent consoles, and one that's never appeared in any collection. And that's likely because of the lack of investment Sega had in making the title from the start. Sonic Team appears to have only been involved in a purely supervisory role, making sure that their brand was respected, with other members of Sega in a production capacity only, the majority of the programming and art team coming from Hudson Soft. This meant that a lot of the team who worked on this title were overlapping with the far more critically praised Mario Party 3, which, coincidentally, was also the first game in that series to feature a single-player story mode, which, funnily enough, was also criticised on release. These party-style games always appear to be quite transient. Developers would rather make a sequel than remaster the existing property, hence why within 21 years there were over 25 distinct Mario Party games. Shuffle, however, never got a sequel. The closest that exists today is the Mario vs Sonic series, which adapts the minigame concept under a very distinct Olympic sports theme. And whilst I can't point at Sonic Shuffle and pretend it's a great game by any means, I do think that that's a little bit of a shame. It's certainly worth checking out.